Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi there. Good afternoon. Welcome. I think people are coming on in, connecting. If you don't mind, go ahead and mute yourself for now, please. We will have time for questions and audio and all that in a bit, but if you don't mind, keep yourselves muted for now, just because we are a large enough group that it could get a little too much crosstalk. So welcome, good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Frances. I am one of the advisors in the College of Engineering. So happy to have you join us. I'm going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, those who will be joining me in the presentation. Then we'll go over some housekeeping and we'll get rocking and rolling. So if I could go ahead and ask Sarah to introduce herself, and then Shark and Maritza.
Hi there, good evening, y'all. I'm Sarah Ocampo. I'm the newest advisor in the College of Engineering, not new to advising, just new to engineering. So I'm very happy to be joining you here today.
Fantastic. And Shark, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharik. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm one of the advisors in the College of Engineering. Thanks for coming through. It's nice to meet you.
Awesome. And then Maritza, if you don't mind.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maritza Fulgencio. I'm the Student Affairs Manager in the Department of Computer Science, and I assist our main undergrad advisor, Selena Martinez, with undergrad advising questions. So welcome, everybody who came.
Awesome. And thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's kind of end of the day. You might be getting hungry, so we will try to be respectful of your time. Just some housekeeping. Again, please keep yourself muted until the end when we have some questions. I will be giving the presentation. You can chat Shark, Sarah, or Maritza directly throughout the presentation if you have questions. There is the send to everyone in meeting, and then there is the send to a person directly. I will not be paying attention to the chat, so please don't send it to me right now. If it's something general that you think everybody would probably have a question, put it in the general chat. If it's something a bit more specific to your situation, please chat it directly to one of the college advisors. In order to make this a little bit easier, I would ask you to consider That's so funny. I accidentally got muted and I didn't do it. I would ask you to consider putting your major behind your name, or changing your name. So you can just, if you put your mouse hovered in the top corner, everybody I'm sure knows this by now, but just in case, 3 little blue dots should show up. If you click on the blue dots, you can rename yourself. And that just gives us a sense for later when we do some breakout rooms, which majors there are. This presentation is going to be recorded. So if you'd like to keep your cameras off, that's fine. You're welcome to keep them on if you'd like, but when we get to the general chat at the end, we'll stop the recording there. But for this bulk presentation, this part will be recorded. If I could actually get Shark to launch our first poll, just to give us a sense of which students we have in the audience. You should be able to see just answer which major we have joining us. That would be lovely. So just real quick, go ahead. It looks like we have a lot of CS in the house. Thank you for joining us. But I'm happy to see all of the majors represented. So again, perfect. That's probably a good enough sense to help us get a good idea of who happens to be in here. Awesome. So if we could end that poll, and then Shark, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the next poll, just to give me a sense, and my colleagues, if you were admitted to UCSB as a freshman admit, meaning you came here directly from high school, or if I have any transfers in the house with me today. Awesome. All right. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. So that helps, but thank you everyone for joining. So we'll go ahead and get rolling then. And I'm going to close these things. And again, my colleagues will be managing the chat. So first and foremost, what are we doing here today? So as you all know, winter schedule registration is upcoming. So we're going to give you some pointers on the tools that will help you figure out what you need to register for, specifically the major progress check in gold, and of course the infamous grid, which you all should be familiar with. It is in your gear. I will be toggling between gold and this presentation, so it might get a little bit back and forth. Thanks for your patience. I am going to give a brief demo at some point on how to navigate gold, so how to find this, how to look for courses, how to look for prereqs and restrictions. I know most of you just did this summer during orientation, but it may have been a while ago, and that's why we wanted to spend a bit of time doing it. We'll then move into winter registration, talking about important dates, mapping out your classes, and really talking about how you might want to strategize for Pass 1. You all should have received an email on Tuesday notifying you that you can register for up to 10 units in Pass 1. This is a little bit of a change from previously, and so we're going to talk about some strategies, but it is a new thing. So that means your 4 advisors here don't have a ton of historic data to give you some concrete example on exactly what to do. So rather, we're going to give you some tips for how to successfully navigate this. And then briefly thinking about waitlisting, which happens in Pass 2. And then we'll have some time for individual chats / group chats, because we probably will ask the computer science majors to head with Maritza to a breakout room. So as far as your first question of what the heck to take, you have 2 primary guides. Your first is your major progress check. This is found in gold, and I will show you in a minute how to get there. I strongly recommend that you run it with work in progress selected so that you can see how your fall courses fit into the mix. So again, that's what the work in progress audit does. If it's checking a little box. If you don't check the little box, it will only show you where you stand with your previous work, which might include AP or IBs, or if you happen to have joined us for summer school this summer, that will be in the mix. So that I recommend you start with that, because that's going to give you your best idea of where you presently stand. But that's also best done in conjunction with number 2, your grid. And so that is found in the GEAR publication. And I think Sharik and Sarah might be dropping links to the GEAR in here at some point in time. And you can find your grid starting on page 56, along with your curriculum sheet, which is the list of requirements, and then what we call the grid, which is the 4-year plan. Now, some of you might be exactly where the grid says you're supposed to be, and that's fine. Now, some of you might have some options. You might be able to shift some courses forward, or you might actually be able to enjoy a slightly lighter unit load. And I'll show a demo in a minute, so this will make a little more sense. And either are perfectly acceptable options. However, when we talk about shifting courses forward, there are some that can shift forward and some that should not. And so we'll come back to that in just a moment. But before we go into that too much more, I wanted to just remind you of what that gold major progress check looks like. And please remember to expand all. Again, when I shift to the demo mode, I'll show you where to find it. But basically, it is a document in gold, expandable, collapsible, red X's, green checks, sometimes some in progress symbols that really matches your curriculum sheet. So everything that's on your curriculum sheet in GEAR, the list of requirements, is noted in here. But do expand all. So you can see on my left side, it's kind of at a big one at a glance. I've pulled a computer science major here. And so then you can see, this big red X for computer science pre-major, not satisfied. But if you expand it, you can see my example on the right, where this student has many of the preparatory classes done and some in progress. And so this is what I mean by using this tool to figure out what you've already satisfied and which courses are left. So once you've done that, then you can kind of turn to your grid, or again, depending on how big your screen is, maybe pull them both up side by side. And then you can kind of see like which places can you move forward. So for example, I have all 5 of the second quarter schedules from a freshman year grid on the major. So for example, a chemical engineer should be, in Chem 1A right now. And so that means in winter, they're going to go on to Chem 1B. Now, if you, for example, and I'll just start with chemical engineering again, if you happen to be a chemical engineer in Math 3B in the fall, you'll notice that on your grid, Math 3B is gridded for the winter. So that's what I mean by you can maybe shift things forward. So you could go to the next math class, which would be Math 4A, or you could enjoy a slightly lighter load and take, instead of the 17 units, the 13 units. When we talk about what can be shifted, what can be advanced, generally math is the place that you can keep going without running into big prerequisite problems, right? If you're already slightly ahead in math, you can keep going. But many of you learned in orientation that things like Physics 1, courses like Physics 1, that course is only available starting in the winter quarter. And so you couldn't take it in fall. So since it's written on here for winter, please, if your major sheet requires Physics 1, which if you happen to look at all of these grids, you'll notice it does, you should plan on Physics 1. So physics should not be delayed. And probably if you're starting in, and I'm going to toggle back, pardon me, if you happen to be starting in a linguistics series like 3A, 3B, 3C, because those are so sequential, you should definitely stay on track with those. Probably writing, you should stay on track with. If you're taking writing 1, you should not be shifting writing 1 forward to spring. Chemistry, if you have to continue the chemistry series, stay with Chem 1B. And then depending on your major, some of them like ECE5 is only offered once a year. Now, how are you supposed to know this? Well, that's why there are advisors. So if you, look, I'm telling you, it's okay to move the math forward. But if you are in doubt about something like that seems awfully specific, that's why you would consult with an advisor. So let me go ahead and move forward then. I just wanted to put kind of almost like the 3 tools up in one fell swoop for you about how you might be working with these together. And I think you already have heard me say, again, you have your electronic progress check called the major progress check. This is a snip, a screenshot from a computer science person. That correlates to your major sheet or your curriculum sheet in gold. We call them interchangeably major sheet, curriculum sheet. So this preparation for the major, it appears right over here in your major progress check. And then we use your grid to show when these courses are supposed to be taken. So it's 3 different pieces of information that all together should help you move forward in planning. Now, many of you will not be taking much in the way of general education this quarter, or if you, this quarter meaning winter, excuse me. But if you have, or those of you who might have it on your grids, it might be like the writing courses, the area A courses. But for anybody who has a little bit of extra room, maybe they decide to pause on, they're ahead in math and they decide to pause and they want to do a GE, or maybe they're a computer science major, which has a little more room. Just a brief reminder from orientation. We have our general subject areas A through G, and these categories, a course may only apply to one general education subject category in D, E, F, or G. So for example, art history 6A, popular art history course is either an area E. So if you look it up in gold, you'll see that it's been assigned to have an area E designation, or it's an area F designation, and you'll find that in gold. It says EF. It's meant to be read as an or. It is not meant to be read as an and. It will not simultaneously fulfill both of those categories. How do you pick? Well, you kind of keep track on your own. Either you write it down, you talk with an advisor. Gold will always, in the progress check, put it in the first open space it can. So in this example, area E, and then once you take another area E, it would kick it down to area F. But just a reminder, it's meant to be read as a big or, not an and. Now, there are special subject requirements, if you all recall, and those classes can apply sometimes to multiple places. So for example, it is permissible for courses to apply to one D through G category, any special subject category that it applies to, and the American History and Institutions requirement. So in this case, I have an example of Chicano Studies 1A. That course has been identified as counting for the American History and Institutions requirement. That course also happens to fit into general education area D. And so it is okay for that course to apply to American History and Institutions area D. If you look it up in gold, you'll see that it also counts for the ethnicity requirement, which is a special subject requirement. So we know that overlap is okay. It also shows up in special subject writing, So that's okay. And again, it is okay for it to count with the university requirement of American history and institutions. 4 for the price of 1 isn't actually quite so common, although there are a handful that happen to do this combination of 4. Usually you're going to find more like 3 for the price of 1. Again, not as many of you are going to be looking for GE in the winter just based on the required classes, but just a word for the future, or we know that a handful of you are looking for GE. And so please keep these guidelines in mind so that you can work productively. So at this point in time, I'm actually going to switch over to gold. And I have to tell you, as is the way of technology, our gold demo system is being repaired. So you all get to actually use my gold from when I was a student, because we can't compromise your records, but I'm okay with you seeing my perm number because I graduated a million years ago. So some of the features will be limited, but we're going to review a few of the things that I've mentioned in the previous slide. So you're all probably quite familiar with gold at this stage of the game. You know that if you go to your schedule, it will be there for fall. I'm not currently a student. That's why it says no info. But if you all should have looked already, if you come to the Find Courses tab, this is where the schedule of classes currently resides. Again, because I'm not a current student, Winter 22 does not appear for me, but it does appear for you. So you would go ahead and select winter, Winter 22, we're going to use fall for our demo. If you know exactly what you want, you could go ahead and select by department to find out the times. But if you're not quite sure, you could, or you want to place some parameters, you could also switch to the advanced search. So what I would suggest doing again is looking at your gear once you've already determined, okay, I'm a computer science major, I am in CS8 in fall, so I know CS16 is what I'm headed for in the winter, and I'm in Math 3A in fall, so I know Math 3B is what I'm headed for in winter, physics, and I'm actually done with area A, so I'm going to look for a GE, or I'm just going to look for the 3 classes. So you can come here and you can look up those specifically if you'd like. So for example, in our computer science, and again, many of you I know have done this, but it might have been a while. So just a brief refresh, you can come here, you can see, and again, this is all fall data. Please make sure you're in winter. You can see when the course meets, where it meets, and the section time. Course info, very important. You can look at the prerequisites. Do look at the restrictions. This is going to become very useful later in our session when we talk about which courses to try to register for in Pass 1, because you might want to see like, okay, are only chemies registering for this class in the first 2 pass times, so I could afford to wait to Pass 2, or are only EEs, or is this something that many students will be taking, and so if it's limited to my major in Pass 1 only, maybe I need to grab it now. So that's where you find that information about who can register for it during which pastime. That's under restrictions. So that's kind of one of the tools that you will be using. Again, some of these classes are going to have multiple options for enrollment lectures. So for example, and again, we're in fall data here right now, but for example, Math 3B had a Tuesday, Thursday, 8 a.m. lecture, and had a remote lecture, and had a synchronous, and had a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So please get in there and see how many options you have when you're doing, for these particular times. So we should have already established what you need by the first steps that we went through. Round 2 is to see when these courses are offered. If you need a little help plotting it out, one, there is the registration cart, which I think many of you used this summer during orientation, where you can add to cart your preferences. But if you're not ready to do that stage of the game yet, you might actually want to come back to the registration worksheet first. And this is, we'll put it in the chat for you all, but this is where you could kind of map it out. So if you know there's a couple different lectures of math, and you could put those on there to see which times there are. And then maybe you look up your ECE5 and you see what time that is. You can kind of use this if you're visual, and that helps you map it out. But again, you're going to be pulling this information from Gold. Now, I've kind of talked about how to find classes, but what I have not shown you is where the heck is that major progress check. So if you recall, you'll come over here to progress, and this drop down menu will show up, and you would be clicking on GE and major progress checks. Now, I am so old that I actually do not have a major progress check to show you guys. I'm so sorry, we can't actually go through with it. I actually graduated a long time ago, so it doesn't appear here, but that's where yours will be. And if you recall, I mentioned that, you can select your progress check, and there is a little button to click that says select work in progress. And that's how you will get the progress check to incorporate your fall data into the mix. If you have any trouble with that, you can always come to one of our drop-in advising, and we can kind of walk you through that and do the gold emulation with your PERM number. So that's just kind of to give you a heads up on where that is. Now, let me go back here briefly. I've already showed you our registration worksheet. So we think we've already put that in the chat, so you know where to use that if it's useful. I think some of you used it in our summer orientation. If it's useful, please use it. If you didn't find it terribly useful, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you don't use it. But again, that's what it looks like. The one online is the one that you can type in. So one of the things now to kind of turn our attention to, and before I do that, I'll ask my colleagues, have we been getting a lot of questions about any of these topics? Do I need to revisit anything? Okay, cool. Thank you. And thanks for dumping those things in the chat. I'm sure many of you are slightly concerned about how to use Pass 1 wisely. So we are going to spend a bit of time on that. And if you got our email letting you know that Pass 1, you can register for up to 10 units. I neglected to say this. Pass 1 will begin the week of November 8th. It will post in gold starting on the 1st. And forgive me, I'm actually going to hop back to gold here quickly. You will come to registration, and again, you will change this to winter, and you will see where your pastimes are, or what they are rather, and that will post. Oh, we've got an unmuted folk, if you wouldn't mind, thank you. That will post in gold on November 1st. And so on November 1st, you can log in, change this to winter, and see when your registration period will be. However, I believe the first registration period will begin starting on the 8th, and it will be that week. So don't panic if yours is not on the 8th. Most of you are first-year students, so it won't be on the 8th. You will also notice this is old data for the maximum study load. So in fall, the max for Pass 1 was 13.5. So again, we have a new change that it's changing to 10. Pass 2 max is changing to 15. Now, I know this might be concerning for some folks, but it is meant to help students ideally help students who are a little bit earlier on in their career, to be perfectly honest. So it's allowing everyone to get 2 courses and still have a nice pool, a nice selection of courses left, because otherwise students generally who are a little further along in their careers will be registering before you. And so this allows them to get their most critical classes, which are usually not the classes that you all need. They're much further along in their career here. And so it should leave a bit more robust offerings in Pass 2. Pass 2 max is 15 units, so you absolutely should get enrolled in at least 12 units, which is the minimum for full-time standing. You need that if you're living in university housing, and you need that if you are a financial aid recipient. So how do you figure out which roughly 2 courses to choose in Pass 1? Again, it's a 10 unit max. The reason it's 10 is sometimes there are a handful of 5 unit classes. So you might not actually end up in 10 units, you might end up in 8. Well, we would kind of invite you, as I hinted to earlier, to really look at the course times and to look at what is required for you versus what you could afford to miss, so to speak. So look at your courses that have limited time offerings or likely conflict. So for example, if you're an electrical engineer and you're taking ECE 5, it is only offered once a year in winter. So you must be an ECE 5. So I would write down that time, and then I would look at your your Physics 1 opportunities times and see there are 3 Physics 1 lectures. Do all 3 of those, fit around your ECE 5? So any of the 3 is good, then that potentially one of those could wait. So that's what I mean. If you're finding that you're looking up some of your courses and, based on the lecture times, they seem like you really have limited offerings. You have to get that specific Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m. or nobody probably wants that, 11 a.m. Then make sure you consider that potentially for a Pass 1 enrollment. Again, if you are taking one of the Linguistics 3A, B, or C courses or Writing 1, please register for that in Pass 1. You need to make sure that you get that, and some of those have limited seats. Courses open to all majors, not just STEM majors that are open to everyone starting Pass 2. You might want to look at those. And I should say that, of these 4 bullet points that are on here, not all of these are going to be relevant to all of you. It's just meant to be a way to get you started thinking, because many of you are going to have to register in math, physics, and chem, which are not owned by the College of Engineering. And so when you look at those restrictions about who can enroll in those classes during which pass, some of them say your major only in Pass 1, and then starting in Pass 2, it's open to everybody. And so that's where bullet point 1 comes back into really strong advisory role of like, how likely are you to get boxed in? How much do you need one specific lecture time versus, all right, Gen Chem, I think there's like 6 different Chem 1B lectures. So surely you could, you might not get your preferred time if you use it in Pass 2, but surely you're going to get a seat in it. So that's kind of what I'm meaning by, looking at some of the information that's on there, how much is required. Now, if you have a COE owned course like ECE 5, ECE 5 will be open in Pass 2. Now, Maritza, if I remember correctly, CS 16 will be open to CS majors in Pass 1 and Pass 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that means if you're a CS major, and is that for CEs too?
Yes, CS,
Okay.
CE, and EE.
Perfect. Those 3 College of Engineering majors, Comp Sci 16 is only available to those majors in Pass 1 and Pass 2. So that means none of your stats majors have access to it at that point, or et cetera, et cetera. So that potentially gives you information about if you wanted to, maybe put CS 16 in your Pass 2 if you were having limitations with your other classes where you really needed to make sure you got a specific time in them. I hope this is making sense. I know it is a little bit confusing. I will have to say that it's, it's brand new. So it is designed to help make sure that there's a robust selection of classes available in Pass 2 so that everybody can get a good selection of courses for their main 12 units, which again is the minimum. But it just, we're trying to give you some things to think about. Some of your situations might be specific. And so, you might have to do a little bit of navigation in gold. Now, one other note, if you are ahead, it's okay to leave those courses to Pass 2 because it's minimal impact if you don't have the course. How might you possibly be ahead? Well, if you are already in Math 4A, linear algebra, in fall, you're 2 quarters ahead in math. So it's okay to wait for the next math in Pass 2. Or for example, if you are a computer science major and you're already in computer science 16, if you don't get computer science 24 in the winter quarter, it's probably not going to be the end of the world, because if you look back at your grid, you'll notice that that's gridded for your 3rd quarter. So I know there's a temptation to really get ahead, like I'm already ahead and I really want to try to push things forward. But again, it might work out. But for right now, Pass 1, really the strategy should be if you're in a tight spot where only 1 or 2 lecture times work to make it all fit together, then that's probably what you should prioritize. Or if you are in Linguistics 3 ABC or Writing 1, if you need one of those for winter, you should absolutely prioritize that for Pass 1. If you are in Math 2A, then you should prioritize Math 2B. So I hope that that gives everyone a sense. I know this is causing a little consternation and confusion for students, but it is meant to be a helpful thing moving forward. And again, Pass 1 for winter, the maximum will be 10 units. Gold has possibly not been updated yet, but it will be. And again, remember the demo that I showed, I was in fall 2021, where the change had not been made yet. Whoops, excuse me, wrong view. Let's go back. So one other thing, just a reminder, as I've mentioned on here, when you look at that course information and restrictions, this is where you can see which majors it's open to in Pass 1 only, and then that means that in Pass 2 it's open to the general public, and which courses still will have it restricted in Pass 2 for those majors. Now, Comp Sci 16 had not yet been updated. I know somebody already noticed that, and my screenshot from yesterday hadn't been updated. Pass 1 and Pass 2, it will be these majors only for Comp Sci 16. So even though I know this says Pass 1 only, it's being fixed. You can see Comp Sci 24 has Pass 1 and Pass 2 listed on there. So it's, this is valuable information as you are trying to make the decisions about which classes you should enroll in Pass 1 versus Pass 2. All right, Shark, any clarifications needed on any of that?
I think we're getting to them in the chat. Again,
Okay.
Students, if you have questions that might be beneficial to everyone, put them in the general chat. If you have questions about your specific situation, you can message me or Sarah directly. There will be also a question and answer period at the end of the presentation.
Fantastic, thank you. And almost lastly, important winter dates. Again, this is under registration info. Pastimes will post on the 1st. The pastimes are not starting the 1st. They'll be posted here so that you can go in and see when they are. And then all of the winter dates are posted. So first day of instruction, first day, when can you add courses? When can you drop courses? This stays throughout the quarter posted so that you have that helpful information. Admissions is working hard to finish the evaluation of your records and have all of your APs, IBs transferred and in your major progress check. Now, I've really run into very, very few people there's done yet, but I know there could still be a few outstanding ones. Make sure you look at them in case something is missing. So again, that's in your major progress check, and under all credit accepted, you can see all of your APs. Or if you know you passed the AP calculus exam, you run a progress check and it's not showing up, you need to let us know and connect you to admissions, because it means something is probably wrong. The registrar will be looking for anybody who has new student has major progress check evals credits transferred after I put Monday the 2nd, it's Monday the 1st, pardon me. And they will be looking at updating if need be, okay? And then lastly, before we get to the Q&A part, just thinking ahead about what comes next, Pass 2. There will only be, I think, one day between Pass 1 and Pass 2. It's a really quick turnaround, so pay attention to the timing. Number 2, waitlisting. Many of you may end up in a situation where there's a class that you might end up waitlisting, and that might not actually be true so much for this go around, but perhaps in the future. You do have to have at least 12 units actually enrolled on your schedule in order to waitlist. So that's why it's so important to keep that in mind. Because you will not actually be enrolling in 12 units in first pass, there won't be any waitlisting available in the first pass. We talked to a lot of you about this in summer orientation about linking courses. Linking courses can be an effective tool with the wait list to say, I'm enrolled in, I don't know, Global 1. I have a seat, but I'm on the wait list for Art History 6B because that does more GE that I need. And so if you link them, that is a tool. It will ask you when you put yourself on the wait list, if you'd like to link it with an existing course on your schedule, then what that means is if space opens up in that desired waitlisted class, it will remove you from the existing course on your schedule and put you in the new one if auto add is enabled. Oh, We've got somebody who needs to mute. Thank you. That's if auto add is enabled, and you can see in the details about waitlisting. Now, the other benefit of linking courses is it will kind of count as a net unit value. So if you have linked them, if you're enrolled in 12 and you've waitlisted one course and you've linked it with one of your existing, it's still seeing you as only having a value of 12 rather than a value of 16. And so that can be beneficial when we're looking at the maximums. Now, it'll be a little weird for pass 2 because, again, 15 units is the max for pass 2. So it kind of depends on how many units you end up or what it is you're trying to wait list. So again, the linking might be useful in that scenario as well. Crashing classes means you're trying to get into the class once the quarter has begun and you're actually attending the first day of the quarter. And then using add codes. Add codes are a 4-digit code. I think it's alphanumeric, if I remember correctly. And they are used to override full classes. So if you've gone to the class and they say, yes, we're taking 3 more people, and you are given an add code, you will need that to allow you to add the course. They're usually given out by the TA in section, or some departments manage them a bit more centrally. And so sometimes the departments actually are the ones who are distributing those. I'm just briefly touching on these because these are not so germane to your Pass 1 registration, but there are things you might have experienced this fall quarter, or you may end up hearing about as the quarter goes on. So I just want registration goes on. So I just wanted to toss that out. So at this point in time, we'd like to turn it over to some questions and perhaps some breakout rooms. And so I think maybe we can see kind of if there's some general questions that people have put in the chat, or Shark or Sarah, if there are lots of the same questions that people have asked that we need to address as a whole.